So my name is Tari Tan. I'm the Assistant Dean for Educational Innovation and Scholarship in the Office for Graduate Education at Harvard Medical School. I'm also a lecturer in the Department of Neurobiology at HMS. And the course that I'm going to be talking about today is a course called Teaching 100, which is a graduate level course taken by the Master's in Medical Education students, as well as by some PhD students and some educational postdoctoral fellows, including the curriculum fellows at HMS and the pedagogy fellows at HSPH. And the course is designed to train current and future educators in the science of learning and teaching. And so the students in the class are both students themselves as well as educators. And so the challenge that we were facing, or that I sought to solve, was how do we use AI in the classroom at all? What are the policies that we should establish for AI use? And so at the beginning of the semester, we approached this in my class by actually collaboratively co-creating guidelines between the students and myself for the appropriate use of generative AI in the classroom. So you can see what we came up with here in this document. This is a summary of the discussion that we had in class, as well as I allowed students to submit written feedback in response to some specific questions. And of note, one of the key recommendations that came out of our discussion was that the students emphasized it would be useful for the instructional team to actually build in activities and assignments that use generative AI in the course so that the students could experience it, again, both as students in the class, but importantly, to learn how they could incorporate generative AI into their instructional practices. And so that was where we started from. And so the assignment that I incorporated AI sub-assignments into was the capstone assignment in the course, which involves students designing a syllabus for a course of their choosing, as well as a lesson plan, and then annotating those final documents, highlighting the ways in which they incorporated evidence-based practices into their course design. So it's an application assignment of what we've been learning throughout the class. So to just give you a few examples of how we did this, this was one of the scaffolding assignments where they were building up to creating this capstone assignment throughout the semester. We had one where they had to design the specific assessments that they would use in their mock syllabus course that were aligned to specific learning objectives. So I first had them complete the assignment on their own. And then there was this part 2 that I prompted them to actually ask AI, like ChatGPT or another engine, to complete the assignment as well. And then there were some reflection questions to reflect on how the output from the generative AI compared to what they had come up with themselves. That was another key recommendation from our discussion about creating the guidelines for AI use, was we recognize there's a big metacognition benefit to reflecting on the ways in which generative AI can or can't be helpful. So just to see, one example student prompt from this assignment, very straightforward. How could learners in a formal course be assessed with regards to specific learning objectives? And then the students got some output from the generative AI tool that they chose to use. So that was one way we did it earlier in the class. And some of the student insights from that activity, they thought that it was useful and saw the benefit of generative AI in instructional design, but some limitations were highlighted. For example, saying, given that there's limited context that we provided to the AI tool, some of the suggestions weren't actually useful. And so we built on this theme later in the course when I incorporated an additional activity into the final capstone assignment when they submitted the full assignment. So in this context, what we did is that, as I mentioned, students had to annotate their syllabus and a lesson plan that was part of that syllabus, indicating applications of evidence-based educational approaches. And so we also, again, asked them, after they had done it themselves, to upload the lesson plan portion of their assignment and ask a generative AI tool to identify or to make annotations. And I deliberately left it vague in my instructions here of just asking them to generate annotations for your lesson plan. I didn't provide any additional guidance because this was paired with a follow-up assignment on which students would actually get feedback on the prompt that they initially submitted to generative AI. And then following that feedback, as well as some additional guidance that the instructional team provided, had an opportunity to revise that prompt because we wanted to demonstrate the importance of prompt engineering and how that can make the use of generative AI more or less effective. And so in that final reflection assignment, here was what they were asked to do. So again, after they had submitted their annotations and received feedback on it, I said, okay, here now you have an opportunity to optimize those AI generated lesson plan annotations. I provided, for the first time in the course at this point, explicit guidance on what are some features of stronger or weaker prompts, what makes a prompt more or less successful. And I built in this worksheet that would scaffold a prompt creation for students. So walking them through very directed questions or prompts to help them develop an effective prompt. And then at the end here, asking them reflect and synthesize on all of the answers you just provided to make a new prompt and do the annotation exercise again. And after that, I asked them to submit the new prompt, the new output, and had some closing thoughts and reflection questions, both on this particular assignment, as well as I collected reflection questions on the use of AI in the course as a whole. And so following that, here's an example of a student prompt that came out after the revision. So you can see it's much more in depth, has many more components. And similarly, the output that the student got was quite rich. And the particular feedback that we got from students in response to this assignment, how did the annotations compare after the second round versus the first? You can see, the first time it was less useful. The second time, by changing the question, the annotations were much more informative. There was a lot of enthusiasm. There was a clear difference. This really makes an impact. And overall, the insights that students gained from this exercise, it seems that we succeeded in getting students to really think productively about how generative AI can be used into their own educational practices, which was a main goal of this course. And in terms of overall feedback, students noted on those final reflection questions that the incorporation of AI into the course was very effective. Especially, they said the explicit guidance on prompt engineering was probably the most useful part. And in terms of suggestions for next year, which we're planning on implementing, they said having even more explicit instructions on how to leverage AI and doing that earlier in the course so that we can build on that throughout the semester would be helpful. And so those are the plans for next year. We already have lots of schemes for how we can further integrate generative AI into this capstone syllabus assignment.